Story 1. My brother sails barges up and down the Rhine in Germany. He earns very good money. The job requires attention, but much of the time he sits and steers, so it is relatively relaxed. There are no strict deadlines or complex problem solving. He listens to loud music and enjoys the scenery. You need many qualifications to do this work, but starting as a deckhand is a good entry point. The starting salary is a little below average for a deckhand, but you can advance quickly. The best part is the schedule. He works 2 weeks on the barge and then has 2 weeks off while still being paid. He is paid for all hours spent on the ship, including sleeping. The job pays well, is not stressful for him, and provides long periods off for rest and holidays. There are downsides, and it is not for everyone. 1. You spend 2 weeks at a time aboard with colleagues. If you do not get along with them, you will not enjoy it. 2. While there is downtime, you are expected to help with tasks when needed. If something is urgent, you must respond. For example, you may need to offload cargo at 3 a.m. after docking. 3. Being away from family and friends for 2 weeks at a time is not for everyone. If you have a partner, they may miss you when they come home to an empty house for 2 weeks. You need an understanding partner. 4. If you live far from the docks, there can be a long commute. At the end of your rotation, you will often be hundreds of miles from where you started. He and his crew typically drive a car and take turns driving back. Story 2. When you run into these people in the wild, it is usually a white-collar office worker making 6 figures. But when you ask people to actually say what they do, all you get are security guards and help desk staff making $50,000 per year. Story 3. I operate machines at this factory. Some nights can be rough, but some days I spend 50% of the time on my phone, drinking coffee and snacking. I quit a different factory job that was wearing me down and moved to a cheaper area. I now make more money, have a lower cost of living, and an easier job. Work experience helped a lot. Story 4. I work in college admissions. We have a busy period every few weeks, but in between my work is usually finished by lunch. Story 5. I work on a help desk at a hospital. There are very few calls. I make almost $50 an hour. I handle 8 to 10 calls a day. Most last only a couple of minutes. It is remote work, which makes it a good gig. Story 6. I drank tea and checked packaging lines every 2 hours during the night. I worked in quality control in a tea factory. Story 7. I worked for a major defense contractor in California. My job title was aviation electrician. I am a military veteran. When I started, the job site was barely underway and there was very little work, so I was moved around a lot. I always ended up behind a computer because I had basic computer skills and few others did. I was responsible for keeping an Excel spreadsheet up to date with the parts we had, and later with tools. I would show up, perform the tool accountability check, and then sit at a computer for the rest of the day. I taught myself random things on Google, literally absorbing anything I wanted. I was paid $42 to $44 an hour, and they let me call out at any time as long as my work was up to date. It was the easiest job I ever had. I was making $60,000 a year because I called out frequently. If I had not, I would have been at $80,000. I only left because I started working on my engineering degree. Story 8. I worked in telecommunications for over 30 years. One assignment was to join a new startup group, though I do not remember the group's purpose. The manager running the group never obtained office space, desks, chairs, computers, or anything else. He did nothing. 2 others and I were required to report to him every morning, but he had no work for us and told us to sit in another group's break room. The other group noticed us lounging, reading, and playing cards, and they complained. We were asked to leave. Our manager told us to be gone until after lunch and then report back to him. I still had a key to an unused storeroom from my previous position in the same building. I brought in a desk, chair, a television, and my laptop for entertainment. The other 2 in our group were often away. This continued for 8 months. Every day we showed up, said hello to the manager, disappeared until after lunch, said hello again, and went home. We all had long commutes and asked to work from home, but our manager refused, saying his superior might at any moment ask where his workers were and what they were doing. That never happened. During that time, I did a lot of reading, taught myself to play the guitar and banjo, and took many naps. Story 9. Several years ago, I had a part-time weekend gig as an administrative assistant at a real estate office. I worked Saturdays and Sundays, 9 to 5. At the time, the minimum wage was $10 per hour and the job paid $17 per hour. A busy day consisted of preparing signs and balloons for 2 or 3 open houses, printing listings for the agents, and answering a few phone calls. Nearly everything was done online, and with cell phones, most clients contacted their agents directly. There was virtually no foot traffic, and any major office project was typically handled by the Monday through Friday full-time person. So most of the time, my only function was to be a warm body behind the desk. I spent a lot of time catching up on work for my freelance projects, watched Netflix, and talked on the phone with friends. I had a multiple listing service account so I could read agent remarks to see all the problems that were not reflected in the public listing. My favorite was a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom lake cottage where the agent wrote that the bath is in a separate room removed from the bathroom. Do not ask. Honestly, it was not a bad way to make $17 per hour. I have no idea if such a job exists anymore. After the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, with everything more digital, virtual, and remote, offices may not even bother staffing their physical locations on weekends. Story 10. I have been a casino dealer for 15 years across 3 properties. I am now in management. I stand around 8 hours a day, talk to the daytime regulars, cheer up the dealers, and do almost nothing mentally or physically other than touch a few tablets. At $32 an hour with yearly bonuses and raises, I really can't complain. Story 11. I work at an airport, loading and unloading planes with cargo. It sounds busy and hard, but realistically I spend half the time on my phone, waiting for planes to land or for the cargo to be ready to load. Story 12. I did data entry for a digital publisher. I automated formatting in Microsoft Excel using macros, reducing day-long jobs to 8 to 10 minutes. I kept the method to myself for weeks before telling my manager. She had me teach my teammates to boost the team's output, but they found the process confusing and not worth learning. She then asked me to work with the technology teams to develop more intuitive tools. We built those tools, but people still did not use them, saying their existing system worked and changes would cause more errors and lower productivity. They removed those tasks from me, and I returned to my old routine. Story 13. I manage a cell phone store. I earn $75,000 plus commission. Some days I am busy, but many days I just relax and watch YouTube. About 3 out of 5 days are lazy and 2 are busy during the week. Mostly I help older customers delete an app or set up a new phone line. I came from construction. I earn a little less and have far less physical wear and tear, and I absolutely love it. 2 years in, and I am never looking back. Story 14. Senior management. You are ultimately accountable. Once you build a strong team and delegate effectively, you must ensure that operations run smoothly and approve decisions and participate in brainstorming. However, if something goes wrong, the responsibility falls on you. Story 15. I work in administration at a warehouse. We enter sales orders and send them to warehouse staff. It takes barely any time, and I am bored 95% of the time. I would rather be busy, to be honest. Story 16. I am an emergency medical technician with a private ambulance company. After working the stressful 911 side of the job, I switched to the events division. Many sporting events and concerts require emergency medical technicians on site, where you mostly deal with intoxicated patrons. These days I mostly work load-ins and load-outs for large events such as when they set up and break down stages. I sit in empty stadiums waiting for things to happen. I might give a bandage or an ice pack here and there are occasional serious medical situations. Most of the time I get paid to watch online videos and play video games. The downside is that a single shift can be 16 hours long. Story 17. I work the night shift on a psychiatric ward as an orderly. On quiet nights, I browse the internet and do nothing. Story 18. I drive around my county for 9 hours a day looking for road signs that need to be fixed, and then I fix them. Story 19. I work in security at a museum. I help children who become separated from their parents and provide first aid if they are injured. I also monitor the facility to prevent leaks and other risks to the artifacts. Story 20. After teaching in public school for 10 years, I now tutor privately for one family. I am paid a full-time salary, including health benefits. It is a godsend of a job, and I am very grateful every day. Story 21. I worked at a guarded bicycle parking lot from 10 o'clock at night to 6 o'clock in the morning. One or two people usually came to drop off or pick up their bicycles. I spent the time playing video games or watching television series. Story 22. I had a job in health within the mining sector. I was paid $200,000 on a roster of 2 weeks on and 2 weeks off. During the 2 weeks I was on site, I worked almost 30 minutes per day, including travel to the site. The rest of the day I sat by the pool in camp. Story 23. I am an electrical engineer. I get paid for what I know, not for what I do. Story 24. I work on a software team focused on traditional technologies, such as C++ and systems programming. I am competent in those areas, but I specialize in automation, engineering productivity, infrastructure as code, continuous integration and continuous deployment, and similar tools. When the team needed a new internal service, people who knew only C++, systems programming, and proprietary internal tools found it a headache. I know Fast API, GitHub Actions, Kubernetes, and high-level architecture. So a fix takes me about 15 to 30 minutes from bug discovery to deployment. Because few people know those tools, I typically manage only 3 or 4 fixes in a 2-week sprint without anyone noticing. I could stick with that, but I get restless and end up filling my time with other things I should not. Story 25. I work as an emergency medical technician on a construction site. I am basically the school nurse for the workers there. I give ibuprofen for hangovers and clean cuts. I have to do 2 to 3 rounds on the site per shift. Other than that, I stay in my office and do very little. I make $27 an hour for this. Story 26. I once had a job monitoring systems, which basically meant staring at a screen for 8 hours to make sure nothing went wrong. 95% of the time nothing happened, so I built a computer program to do the job for me while I worked remotely in another position, getting paid twice. Story 27. Pre-hospital emergency medicine. You are either very quiet or the world is melting down around you. There were days when I spent hours sleeping, reading, or playing video games. The flip side is that when it is go time, you are not only working but also dealing with some frankly disturbing situations. I never minded it, but it is not for everyone. Story 28. I am an emergency medical services pilot. I sometimes go days without getting a flight. I read a lot and watch too much television. Story 29. I am a maintenance worker at a high school. I have only a couple of short windows of time to do tasks, and the workload is light. I sit idle for 4 to 6 hours a day. I genuinely struggle with the downtime and end up spending too much time on the internet. I have to push myself to make the downtime productive. I got the job by being a journeyman-level tradesperson in 3 trades. I started at $25 per hour with a public employee's retirement system pension and full benefits. I could earn considerably more working in a trade, but I like the government work. Story 30. My brother-in-law was a journeyman electrician at an automobile manufacturing plant. He said there were times he was massively overpaid for playing dominoes. He also worked 60 to 90-hour stretches with maybe 1 day off. It was feast or famine. Story 31. I work at a cannabis shop. 90% of the day I sit on my phone and smoke. The other 10% I socialize with customers. Story 32. I used to work as a janitor at a golf club. There were a handful of tasks that needed to be done every day, but they only took 2 to 3 hours. The rest of the day was spent on site in case something went wrong, which very rarely happened. We could just relax in our little janitor's closet and play on our phones. It sounded nice, but believe me, it got old quickly. I would genuinely go above and beyond trying to find anything I could do, not to ingratiate myself or because I particularly valued the company, but to fight off boredom. At most, I could get about 4 hours of work on a good day. There was only so much to clean, especially during business hours when you could not be disruptive to the paying members at the clubhouse. Story 33. I used to work at a warehouse on second shift in the forklift department. We had a number of orders to stage on the dock for the morning shift to load, and we also loaded a few trucks ourselves each day. It was an 8-hour shift. Took us about 2 hours to stage all the orders, and during the day we would load a few trucks, which took only a few minutes each. For the rest of the day we mostly goofed off, playing Yu-Gi-Oh, joking around on the forklifts, or talking to girls. The pay was low, but it was a great job. Story 34. I work at the front desk of a university residence. It can be busy when many people are signing in guests, but usually I have plenty of time to relax or do homework. Story 35. In college, I worked in the computer labs. I asked to be assigned to the least used ones because most people preferred the busy labs, and I was usually paid to play video games and do homework. Story 36. In most industries, the more experience you have, the less you will do. It's weird how that works. Story 37. I fix things right the first time, so I do not have to fix them again. Story 38. I am a level 4 support technician for a kindergarten through 12th grade educational publisher. I am very busy during the back-to-school season and somewhat busy at the start of the second semester. Otherwise, it is fairly slow. I mostly handle cases that are escalated to development for fixes. Most of my work is straightforward because I have been in this role for over 2 decades. I work from home, so I watch a lot of television and movies and play games on my personal computer. Story 39. Marketing automation. I work from home. I receive a request ticket from a marketer and complete the ticket. Easy tickets take about 5 minutes. More complex tickets take up to an hour. Every 3 months or so I am tasked with building a multi-touch campaign that can take a few hours and requires 3 to 4 hour-long strategy calls spread over a few weeks. Most days I complete 5 to 6 tickets, sometimes fewer if it is slow, and spend the rest of the day on other tasks. Currently, I use my free time to study for a new career and to work on home renovation projects. Story 40. I work for INI Tech. I'd say I only do about 15 minutes of actual work in a day. Story 41. As a former bedside nurse who worked 12.5-hour shifts and rarely had time to take my mandated 30-minute lunch break, I want everyone with a demanding job to know that many entitled people have no idea what it's like to work through lunch, be unable to dawdle on their phone, and remain constantly dizzy. I know because I cared for patients who pressed their call light every 10 minutes because their ice had melted, they wanted their blanket tucked under their chin, or they wanted a 5th serving of applesauce. Not every patient, of course, but some clearly have no idea what it's like to work long, hard shifts. Story 42. I design a specific product and have done so for many years. I studied under pioneers in the industry. They retain me for my engineering expertise, while others handle the actual legwork. Story 43. I work overnight as a security guard at a retirement center. In reality, I am a janitor. I can finish cleaning in 3 hours and then browse my phone and smoke until I can go home. Story 44. I work in outside sales for a welding company that refurbishes fracturing pumps for the oil and gas industry. Most of my job is driving to customer locations, meeting customers, and reminding them of the services we offer. Generating estimates and teardown reports is straightforward. The hardest part is motivating myself to talk to people I do not know and to appear genuinely interested. I normally keep to myself when I am not at work or spending time with my wife and children. Story 45. Mainframe. This platform is designed to be stable. Have enough storage for the system you work with and you will be fine. If anything goes wrong, it is most likely due to third-party software used by your employer. The infrastructure itself usually does not act up or surprise you. Story 46. Some skilled jobs require knowledge gained through years of hard work and experience. Knowing the right thing to do for 5 minutes can save hours or even days of work. This is an important lesson when you are trying to move up in the world. Knowledge and experience are everything. Knowing what to do will boost your earning power like nothing else. Story 47. Security for corporate buildings. I am paid to be bored. The job is to sit or stand in one place and wait for something to happen, but usually nothing does. Electronic devices and reading materials are not permitted. I am expected to stare at the wall. Story 48. Gosh, I wish I'm a carpenter, and I'm exhausted at the end of the day. Story 49. I work in a factory and paint all day. I am alone. I listen to music. When I finish one job, the next typically takes about 30 minutes, so I have some downtime. Story 50. Working with elderly people, there is usually a lot to do during the first 2 hours of the shift and in the hour before the end of the shift. The 5 to 6 hours in between are usually very calm, at least where I work. Story 51. Monitor computer screens. Collect and test samples. Clean the area a few hours before the shift change. Some days I do absolutely nothing because of shutdowns or other issues, and other days I am nonstop running around. It is hit or miss. I work 4 12-hour shifts, then get 4 days off and continue the pattern. Story 52. I worked at a nickel plant for a while. In operations, staffing was typically about 400% of what was needed, so we often sat idle. But on a handful of shifts each year, everyone worked every minute of the shift, and we generated so much value that it justified keeping everyone employed for the rest of the year. I do not know why they could not spread the work out better, but there must have been some justification. Story 53. I am a supervisor at a factory. It is mostly automated except for a few waste stations that need occasional emptying, which the workers handle. We are a little overstaffed, so if I go out to sweep, a worker will offer to do it. I take attendance, and if nothing breaks, there is usually nothing else for me to do. Story 54. I am a subject matter expert in a domain my company may want to enter in the future. They want to keep the option open, so they pay me to maintain that capability. Story 55. I work in adult retail. Sometimes I am selling dildos and can barely take a break, but most of the time I am on Reddit or TikTok. We have chairs because many employees are senior citizens or have disabilities, so I can sit when it is slow as long as I stay on top of my shift duties. Story 56. I work as a sign holder. My job is to hold and wave an advertising sign. Story 57. I work in an information technology support role on contract for a company's human resources and recruiting software. I am the only person in the organization who knows and administers this legacy software. I have been on contract for 2 years. While the software is being phased out, I am still needed to assist with data gathering, reporting, and legal requests related to pending litigation. I do actual work maybe 1 to 2 hours a week, but regularly bill 40 hours. I am paid for my system knowledge and my ability to answer questions when they need to be answered. The rest of my week is spent on training and workshops to stay current, followed by YouTube and computer games. Story 58. I am a night shift pediatric registered nurse in the post-anesthesia care unit. I work 3 nights a week, starting at 6 p.m. Most cases are finished by the time I arrive. I sometimes take a case in the operating room, but often I can go all 3 nights without a patient. Even if an emergency occurs overnight, it is usually a quick discharge. I will never work at the bedside again. Story 59. I worked in building maintenance at a mattress factory in the 1990s. 1 hour of work consisted of checking and recording the oven temperature, changing a light bulb, marking the floor, and placing a bucket to catch leaks. The remaining 7 hours there was nothing to do. There was no internet on phones back then, so I read a lot of books. I also sold marijuana, earning $500 a week in pay and an additional $500 a week in profit. I did that for about a year. It was the best job I ever had. Story 60. I am a security specialist. I sit at a desk, and once an hour the security guards in my assigned region call or text to confirm they are still working. I record their call time and any incident details in a computer folder that will probably never be reviewed unless something serious happens. If someone fails to check in, I contact them, and that is about as much action as I get on the job. Usually everyone checks in within the first 20 minutes, and I spend the remaining 40 minutes doing almost nothing. A coworker uses one of the monitors to play action movies. That is pretty much all we do. Take calls and watch Al Pacino films. Story 61. I was a night watchman for nearly 30 years, including 22 years at the same place. Story 62. I work in customer support for a technology company. My shift is in the latter half of the day, and I generally receive 10 to 12 calls that on average last 4 to 6 minutes. Over an 8-hour shift, I'm free for about 6.5 to 7 hours. I watch YouTube, play video games, read a book, talk to my friends, and eat whatever is available near my personal computer. Story 63. I knew a man whose job was to sample coal quality. Once an hour, he had to take a scoop of coal from the conveyor belt and feed it into a machine for analysis. Then he would read the paper until the next hour. Story 64. Railroad engineers do not do much during automated control. They must take over to start and stop trains and to handle any problems that occur. Story 65. I move food from one part of a building to another so people can find and take it. Sometimes they shout at me because they cannot find the food they want. Story 66. I teach electronics at a university. Finals week and submitting grades are always hectic, but otherwise it is mostly fun and relaxing, with only the occasional meeting or paperwork and training requirements. Then we get the summer off. Story 67. Data analytics. Once everything is built and in maintenance mode, it can be very calm. Sometimes it is too calm. Story 68. Project manager for construction from the ground up. It is all hands on deck in the beginning, but once everything is humming along, the day-to-day is handled by the superintendent. Story 69. I tinker with spreadsheets and send emails. Someone has to do it. Story 70. I work as a security guard at a closed underground mine. For 12 hours a day, no one comes or goes, and I sit in my vehicle reading or listening to the radio. Story 71. I had a job where I was paid to sleep for a few years. If there was a problem, the night security was supposed to wake me up, but they rarely did. Basically, we were protecting some people. Story 72. A friend of mine who is a full-time firefighter says he gets most of his video gaming done on slow days and can play for 12 or more hours on very slow days. Story 73. After college, I worked as a librarian at a small local university. Most days I cataloged the new arrivals and covered the front desk for loans and returns. It got crowded around exams, but most of the time it was slow, and the afternoon and evening shifts were mostly quiet. I got through a lot of reading, and most days I would show up at work with a Universal Serial Bus flash drive loaded with the latest episodes of whatever I was watching at the time. The pay was not great, but it was a relaxed job. Story 74. I worked at an information technology help desk. I automated all my daily tasks with Excel and wrote a book on how to do it in my spare time. Story 75. Programmer. The industry has become flooded with people who are not naturally talented and only went to boot camps for a few months to get a six-figure salary. Fair play, good on them. But if you are naturally skilled and think that way, you can easily find a job where you are a top performer doing 10 to 20 hours of work a week. I am one of the most productive people at my company and routinely am at the gym in the middle of the day or just playing video games or taking naps. I continue to receive better reviews with every cycle. It is a great gig. Story 76. I am a crane operator at a hydraulic fracturing location in the oil field. I work a 12-hour night shift from 5 in the evening to 5 in the morning. During that shift, I spend about 10 hours in my truck playing video games or using my phone. Last year, I earned $209,000. I feel like I am robbing them. Story 77. I'm a non-stop dancer and self-employed. No dance, no wage. Story 78. Outbound call center market research. Some months are very busy, but others I spend 6 hours scrolling on my phone and listening to answering machines. Story 79. I'm an administrator for an agriculture business. Our busiest times are February, March, August, and September. By busy, I mean steady enough, but the rest of the months are mostly spent clock watching. I go on Reddit, use social media, and do online surveys to fill my days. Story 80. Help desk and networking team manager at a bank. We provide support only for internal staff. As long as systems are running, we are good. There are plenty of daily tasks, but I can complete them in about 20 minutes. I am working on a major project that mainly involves moving data. I start the process and monitor it to ensure it finishes without errors. Then I watch YouTube and relax. Story 81. I provide information technology support for a local, privately owned, medium-sized company. I work the morning shift when the plants start up, from 5:30 in the morning to 2:30 in the afternoon. and generally have about half of that time to do whatever I want. Story 82. Storekeeper at a local government facility. 2 to 3 hours of work in the morning if all the trucks are on time. The rest of the shift is spent staring at walls or doing a few minutes of paperwork. Story 83. Software administrator for a large sporting goods retailer. Works from home, makes minor changes as requested, adds and removes users and companies, and attends 1 meeting per week. Story 84. Information Technology Systems Architect. They scroll through technology sites or attend trade shows to learn about emerging technologies. They give a presentation or two to convince division heads that a new technology should be implemented. They attend meetings where they delegate the details to a project manager, then essentially vanish for a few months or a year. If all goes well, they return and take the credit. If there is a failure to launch, they blame the project team, often from a hotel room at the next trade show. Story 85. Not me, but my friend just got a raise at his engineering job after he put in 25 hours playing The Binding of Isaac over the past week. What is that about? Story 86. Some days we do not have much to do and I become unbelievably bored as the day drags. Other days are normal, which I like, and some days are full-on and stressful, which I also somewhat enjoy. Days with nothing to do feel uninspiring. It is really draining to be bored. I can browse Reddit, play games, and so on, but it still feels odd. I thought I would enjoy that, but I would rather be productive at work. Story 87. I work at a plastic injection molding company. It is a small business with only 3 employees. Some jobs require me to open the machine door and remove the part, but most are automatic and I only need to watch to make sure the part does not stick. It is a great job, definitely repetitive and a little stressful at times, because if I do not catch a stuck part, it can ruin a $30,000 mold. I highly recommend it if you can get into it. Story 88. I was the site supervisor as a military contractor for a United States Air Force F-16 Fighting Falcon flight simulator operation. My mid-shift crew prepped the simulator every night for pilot training during the day. The day and swing shift crews and I were on hand to jump in and repair anything that went wrong during training. Most days the simulator worked fine and required no maintenance or repair. So my crew and I sat through the day and swing shifts, twiddling our thumbs while getting paid. Story 89. I store and process nuclear waste. On a typical 12-hour shift, I work in close proximity to the material, either raw or processed, for between 3 and 5 hours. The rest of the time is spent on training, maintaining qualifications, routine tasks, and waiting for work. This is mainly for dose management, since my employer limits my annual radiation exposure to a fraction of the Occupational Safety and Health Administration's recommended limit. Story 90. I ran a smoke and vape shop that was not very busy. I was paid fairly and had as many hours as I wanted. Overtime was paid under the table. The job eventually made me depressed because I was constantly isolated, and I had quit smoking and vaping, so I lost interest in the work. It also led to vitamin D deficiency. Story 91. I used to work in machine learning in the tech industry. After COVID-19, it became harder to find work in that area, so I took a state job doing bookkeeping for the budget and finance office of a city school. It is a bit odd, but mostly involves making sure Excel sheets match in their numbers. I wrote code to do the work for me, and as I finish training for the position, I am reaching the point where even the staff I supervise can automate most of their tasks. I do not work more than about 2 hours a day, and I plan to reduce that further. The previous person who retired was very paper-based, so the transition took time. I refuse to automate people out of their jobs, so I am teaching them the coding side. If I am right, we will all be goofing off while the work runs itself. I already have a side gig with a startup lined up for my downtime. Story 92. While finishing university, I worked as a night auditor. It allowed me to study while working and was a great job. The role is the graveyard shift front desk agent at a hotel, with additional responsibilities that are quite serious. You are responsible for ensuring the hotel or business has completed proper accounting and for rolling accounts over to the next day. I would have been happy to do night auditing from my 2nd through 4th years of university. If you had Fridays and Saturdays off, you could go to bars and feel completely in the zone, not literally. Where it would hurt is when you are 24 to 27 and your sleep schedule is disrupted during crucial career years. It may still be worth it and manageable. Story 93. Building maintenance. Occasionally, a toilet needs repair or an electrical receptacle needs to be replaced. Most of the work involves walking through the building and checking that systems and equipment are functioning properly. Story 94. I work part-time nights at a 24-hour gas station. I do my work. Repositioning, cleaning, and putting bread in the oven for the morning. Takes at most 3 hours, and I spend the rest of the time looking at the empty highway or using my phone. Sometimes it is very boring, but the pay is better than any other job I have found. By the way, I am not from the United States. Story 95. I work in technical support at a company with approximately 3,500 employees. 90% of our job is waiting to reset passwords. I also manage desktop and laptop setups and all peripherals. The devices are replaced on a 4-year cycle. The majority of the time I read books or scroll social media. I have a love-hate relationship with the night shifts because our support line operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Some nights there are no calls, so I get paid to watch movies and read books. Story 96. When I was at university, I had a sales representative job with the lottery company. I had to visit 8 stores a day on average over 8 hours. Each store actually took 15 to 20 minutes to visit and complete my tasks there. I was usually finished for the day by 11 a.m. It was a great summer. Story 97. I watch students take college exams to ensure they do not cheat. My job title is invigilator. It is just a few hours of sitting there. Story 98. I work in a call center taking incoming calls. I don't have to make outgoing calls. It's mostly seasonal, so right now I just download a bunch of shows or movies I want to watch and pop in my earpods. It's very relaxed. Mind you, the other half of the year is a mad scramble that will fry your brain by the time you get home. Story 99. I watched YouTube videos, Netflix, and Amazon Prime Video. I had my Kindle, so I also read books. I went on walks and got my steps in, usually 14,000 steps while at work. I worked in a theme park fixing things that never broke. I worked 10-hour shifts but had only an hour, sometimes 2, of actual work each night. Story 100. I work the night shift at a water treatment plant. Some nights I will have about 2 hours of work during a 12-hour shift. I must remain alert and monitor the systems of the plant, but much of the time I am simply watching Netflix or reading. Story 101. Sitting in a missile silo, playing checkers and waiting for the order to end civilization as we know it. Story 102. I operate a mining plant. By operate, I mean I sit in a small control room with a refrigerator, a microwave, an air fryer, and Starlink satellite internet. I monitor the cameras and occasionally make adjustments at the control panel. The job pays very well. That being said, I must not become complacent, stop paying attention by watching attention-grabbing movies or gaming, or fall asleep. If something goes wrong at the plant, it happens fast and can cause literally millions of dollars in damage if I do not act quickly or know what to do. The work can be quite technical and complex. I am one of the few people who knows how to operate the plant fully, so I am paid more for my experience than for the physical work. That feels strange because every preceding job I had involved physical labor, so this one feels like I do nothing in comparison. I still perform maintenance checks such as greasing bearings, recording temperatures, checking for faults, and giving the decks a quick hose down. Those checks are needed about every 4 hours and take only 15 to 20 minutes. Occasionally, it becomes a full-on job. Some days I might have to unjam rocks from the liquefier every half hour using crowbars and ropes. If something breaks, I typically assist the fitters with repairs. Those days are the exception rather than the rule. Story 103. I am a ticket scanner. I stand outside all day, press a button, and watch a screen. I am a turnstile with consciousness. Story 104. I am a pilot, a second officer at a legacy carrier. My entire job is to sit during cruise and watch the autopilot fly the plane. I work 9 days a month and earn a salary in the 6 figures. Story 105. I work as a night shift electrician at a sawmill. I work 3 nights a week and am typically active only 1 to 2 hours during each 12-hour shift. I am paid to be on site in case something goes wrong. This facility loses roughly $150 per minute, so preventing even 1 hour of downtime by having me on site instead of calling a contractor or on-call personnel can cover several days of my wages. Most nights I watch YouTube, read Reddit, or stream and play games on my tablet for hours, laughing out loud. Story 106. My part-time job in college was as a night shift agent for an information technology company. I monitored a dashboard and escalated when there was an incident. Most of the time I played games, studied for classes, and watched movies to pass the time. We were not allowed to sleep. Every 4 or 5 shifts there was an incident. I created a log called the On-Call Information Technology Engineer and sent a few emails, which altogether took about 5 minutes. Basically, I was paid to stay awake on behalf of the engineers. Story 107. I met a woman whose job was literally to sleep. A local office building received a discount on its insurance premiums if someone was on site 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The building provided a private room she could use as a bedroom. She arrived in the evening as the maintenance crew left, slept there overnight, and returned the building to the employees in the morning. She was ostensibly the point of contact for first responders in case of an emergency, although no emergency ever occurred. Story 108. I work nights at a gas station. I usually read and sit on my phone for 8 hours, do a bit of cleaning, talk to about 10 customers, and then go home. Story 109. I work for a homeless shelter as a site administrator, also known as a shelter monitor. I am paid $22.50 an hour, have decent benefits, and can work a lot of overtime. All I do is sit and monitor. If something happens, I log it in our logbook. If a resident needs anything, I get it for them. My hours are 4 p.m. to 12 a.m., Monday through Friday. 99% of the time it is quiet and there is nothing to do. I have my laptop, cell phone, and tablet to keep me entertained. Story 110. I operate a lift for 12-hour shifts, supplying power, and earn $30 per hour, 3 or 4 days a week. The cost of living in my area is roughly $20 per hour, so I am saving a lot. Story 111. I own 3 companies and do not do much besides guide the people who run them. I spend a lot of time at work, but I probably work 4 to 5 hours a week. It is very boring, but I had to work hard to get here, so I am balancing the scales. Story 112. On paper, I work 2 jobs 7 days a week, 16 hours per day. Most of the time I am at home in my room on my phone, where I also trade options as often as I can and have made several $1,000s passively. I could possibly add a 3rd job, but I am satisfied with the income from trading at home. Story 113. I do spot welding in a factory. While I move for most of the night, the work is fairly light and I sit most of the time. Sometimes the production line is down and I just sit and wait. The most I have to do is occasionally move pallets to get more materials. I tell people half my job is doing absolutely nothing at all. Story 114. Information technology management is essentially paperwork. Story 115. I am a maintainer at a transit agency. I am either extremely busy or relaxing and doing nothing. Story 116. I am a night shift emergency dispatcher. I do not handle medical calls or crimes. I handle mostly emergency maintenance, floods, and fires. The first few hours can be busy. After that, we relax or play cards because nothing happens between 1 and 6 a.m. Story 117. I load freight part-time. Honestly, it's easy work if you're built for it. My other job is making and selling jewelry. They have nothing to do with each other, but I like both. Story 118. Working from home in dental sales. 50 calls a day and an unattainable quota. It's bullshit. I have been doing it for 5 years. Story 119. I work part-time in my local bookshop to earn money. When it is quiet, I work on my writing or drawing. Story 120. I am a material handler at a factory. 30 minutes of chilling are followed by 5 minutes of scanning and moving items, then 30 minutes of chilling, and the cycle repeats. Story 121. I work in retail pharmacy. After the customer lines are finished at my store, we relax and get paid. I aim to finish the lines in a couple of hours so I have the rest of my 8-hour shift to myself. Story 122. Office jobs generally do not require that much work. All but one of the software engineers work only about an hour a day. I am not a software engineer, but I only work about 4 hours a week. Story 123. I am a professional game master. I make $120 per game running tabletop role-playing games for 3 hours. Story 124. I file referrals for a law office. I am outsourced. I gather the important documents and identifying information and prepare a file so the attorney can simply work on it. Some days are busy, but most are relaxed with 2 to 4 hours of little to do. I play video games, read, and watch television. I am working from home. Story 125. I'm a college student, and I work on campus as a writing tutor. When I started earlier this semester, I thought we would be much busier than we actually are. Most of my time there is spent doing homework or journaling. Story 126. I work night shift in administration at a large warehouse. I work 3 12-hour shifts, and most of the work is finished in about 3 hours. After that, I answer phone calls and emails and make sure the staff downstairs have all the tools they need to do their jobs. I earn $65,000 a year with overtime available when I want it in a low cost of living area. Cannot really beat it. Story 127. My job runs in cycles. Many months of high stress and lots of unpaid overtime are followed by several months of little or nothing to do. Believe it or not, I far prefer the busy times because the days go by quickly and you feel a sense of accomplishment. When you are not busy, you feel kind of depressed, overpaid, and vulnerable to layoffs. It is a trade-off. Some people handle the cyclical nature of the work. Others do not and move on to different jobs. Story 128. In my previous role, a major part of my work was answering phone calls for the staff and letting customers complain to me instead. I seldom paid close attention to callers, often watching a movie or using my phone while offering occasional standard expressions of empathy. Ultimately, customers vented and felt heard. They were satisfied when their issues were resolved. They just needed someone to listen, which I half-heartedly provided. Story 129. Management is highly variable. Some years are smooth sailing with lots of free time. I wondered why I was even there. In other years, I had to fire 4 people. That involved investigations, union involvement, contractual details, and then scrambling to cover their work while short-staffed. Story 130. Not my current job, but I worked at a lodge and hostel in a small mountain town in North Carolina. During spring and summer it was busy, but in winter it was very slow. It is an outdoorsy place but not wintry enough for winter sports, so it is basically just cold and boring. From November through February, I barely did anything besides take phone calls and make reservations for the busier months and perform general upkeep of the property. It was boring, but honestly not a bad gig. The owners treated me well, and I was paid the same regardless of how much or how little I worked. Free housing was included. The downside was that when there was really nothing to do and I knew nobody in town, I ended up drinking a lot out of boredom. I drank way too much, which became a slippery slope. Story 131. I am a toll collector at a bridge. During the evening and midnight shifts, I have a lot of time to watch television and draw. It is nice because I work with only one other person on day shifts. Swing shifts are difficult, but it is a good job. I find a fair number of old coins and some silver. I repeatedly tell drivers that we do not have an electronic toll collection system. Story 132. I am a ramp agent for a major airline. I park aircraft and unload and transport baggage. It is kind of feast or famine in terms of work. There are long periods when I do nothing, punctuated by spurts of vigorous activity. Currently, it is a slow time of year, so on average I am busy about 4 hours of my 10-hour shift. When it is busy, I am lucky if I get a lunch break that day. It pays more than any entry-level job in my area. Perks include free standby flights and decent healthcare benefits. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.